Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. I wanted to do a video for you guys tonight on how the old timers started fires. We as preppers, we got a thing for fire. Everybody's got fire making stuff, but I've never seen anything quite like how the old timers started fires. And when I say the old timers started fires, it was in stoves. A lot of the old folks they were kind of afraid of fire unless it was in their wood stove. There were some pretty nasty wildfires here in Michigan back in the mid to late 1800s that caused a lot of damage, and a lot of those memories and stories were relayed to the old timers. So fire was something that they took seriously, but it was also a very needed and useful tool. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit here. I got some stuff laid out here that I'm going to show you. First of all, the firewood. A lot of the firewood around here, that was brought up in the wintertime with sleighs and teams of horses. It would be brought up and then it would be cut up. Chainsaws weren't prevalent until later. The main way that firewood was cut was with what was called a buzz saw. And what a buzz saw is it was a large circular saw on a platform that was usually run either by a PTO shaft on a tractor or a belt on a pulley or a flywheel on one of the old tractors. And I'm here to tell you there is not a more dangerous piece of equipment out there to use than a buzz saw. And these men would just take those larger pieces of wood and they would just push them into that saw and they would cut them. And there were actually people around here that were killed using buzz saws. There's one story that I remember around 1910 around here. They were cutting wood and one of the pieces of wood had a large knot in it, and when that knot hit the saw exploded, and a piece of that saw hit one of the men in the head and of course killed him instantly. So they were very, very dangerous pieces of equipment. But a lot of the wood was cut by hand, either by one man or two man cross-cut saws, axes, sledge and wedges. And most of the wood stoves were the potbelly variety or boxwood stoves, which are kind of the shorter rectangular ones, or cook stoves. Now when I was growing up there, we had both wood stove and cook stove, and cook stove took smaller pieces of wood than some of the larger wood stoves today. You know, wood stoves today, heck, there's you can put 24-inch pieces of wood in those, but a lot of the stoves that I seen growing up, they took smaller pieces of wood. You wouldn't normally put a piece of wood in there larger than about 12 inches, and a lot of the stuff was split up. Couple of the constants that were always around the wood box was a kindling pail and basically a tinder pail. And kindling pails were always metal, and they always held kindling in it, smaller pieces that were split up. They were just different sizes. They were always metal. Some of them had lids on them. Some of them were just galvanized pails that got holes in the bottom. They couldn't be used for milking or anything like that anymore, so they would repurpose those and use them to hold their kindling. Another thing that was used fairly commonly was wood shavings. Wood shavings and wood chips were used to start the old cook stoves and the old potbelly stoves to keep the house warm. And again, they were usually in some type of metal container like this right here. And wood shavings were actually pretty common. A lot of the old farmers were also carpenters, so they would save any wood shavings or anything that they had, and they would use those in their wood stoves. And again, if they were using a buzz saw, that created quite a bit of sawdust and wood chips with that, and they would go ahead and they would use those as well. Another fairly common type of kindling, and I don't actually have one to show you. All I got is kind of a facsimile here. The old houses all had cedar shake shingles on the roofs, and when those started to get bad, they would tear them off. Well, them old pieces of cedar were excellent kindling, and whenever they ripped a roof off, they would keep all that old cedar, and they kind of would look, those pieces of wood would look kind of like what this cedar shim is right here, except they would be a little bit longer. And they would use those for kindling. They would split them up and they would put them in their kindling pails or whatever, but because they had been on the roof for so long, they were so dried out, they would literally just ignite almost like they were soaked in some type of accelerant. And that gets here to how they started the fires. The main way that they would start fires were with box matches. Ohio Blue Tips were the common matches that everybody had around either their cook stove or their potbelly wood stove to keep warm. And here is kind of the really interesting thing that I seen at many farms when I was a kid growing up. They would take a tin can like this right here, and they would put about a half a cup of kerosene in that tin can. Then they would go ahead and they would fill that tin can full of corn cobs. Of course, corn cobs were another resource that was out on the farm that everybody just had tons of, but they always got put to use. And this was one of the ways that corn cobs were used. They were put in tin cans like this with a little bit of kerosene, and then this was kept outside along the back, I guess the back porch or whatever. They wouldn't keep these in the house. They would keep this outside, but then they would take another tin can and they would put that over top to keep the rain and the snow and the weather out of that. And they would always have a few corn cobs in a tin can like this out the back door. And when they would want to start their cook stove or their wood stove, they would go out and they would take one of these and they would light it with one of their stick matches, and that's what they would use to start their wood shavings and then their kindling. I'm going to see if I can't show you here how to light one of these, or how they look. Get all the excess off this. And these would light no matter how wet or windy it would be. These would light, and they would burn a long time, and it would catch their kindling and their wood shavings on fire so they could get their fire going. So we're going to take our match here, and just like that, it would light. So we're going to take this guy here, flip him in my wood stove, but that's what they would use to light their wood stoves with. And like I said, it's kind of a unique, shut this guy up here. Kind of a unique way that they lit fires. It was, like I said, extremely common. Every farm that I seen had different variations of this. Some of them had bigger cans, of course, that would have, a dozen, maybe even 15 corn cobs in, and some of them just had small tin cans like this right here. So I thought this winter I'm going to kind of go back to this old way of how they started fires, and I'm going to use that to start fire here in my wood stove, and just kind of reminisce when I'm starting fires out here this winter. But I thought I'd share this with you guys. Like I said, it was kind of a unique way that they started fires. Thought maybe you guys that get a little information out of it. And if you got any corn cobs, it's just another way that you guys could use them around your place. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. I appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys get a little information and a little entertainment out of this video here, and you guys have a good one.